This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the Gee Spot Podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us for conversations around sex, spirit, and all things self-care. All things self-care. All things self-care.
This is a journey into sound.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
You are a G-Spot Podcast with Katie Silcox.
Hello, beauties. It is summer. We have just finished the most amazing training here in Charlottesville, Virginia, where all the ladies gathered and we got to go deep into this amazing topic of Ayurveda and Tantra, and it was awesome. We are going to talk about coffee today. Are you excited? Have you had a few espressos and just turned on your podcast? Are you feeling angry already at me that I'm going to give you some rules on your coffee drinking? I have a feeling that people that are really, really addicted to their coffee won't even listen to this podcast. They'll be like, you know what? No, I'm not listening to her. I'll listen to her on other things, but not coffee. So look, I have a lot of compassion for you coffee drinkers. I'm an ex-coffee drinker, and my mom used to have this espresso maker, and I called it my personal orgasmatron. And it made, it ground the beans in front of you and produced this incredible steaming cup of espresso reminiscent of, my fiery nights in Italy when I used to drink espresso at 11 o'clock at night, right? So I get it. I love coffee so much. I remember a friend of mine, Prashanti, he called it artificial ambition. And indeed, that is what it is. So we're going to talk today about coffee. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the sexy, the ugly, the amazing, the not so amazing. We're going to get real about what it does to our female body. And I recently had a friend write me and tell me, you know what, the men folk tend to be underrepresented in your podcast. And I just want to say, you know what, you're right. They are. Men, you guys need to hear this just as much as we do. And we love you and we welcome you to the Gee Spot. We would not name our podcast the Gee Spot if we didn't have a love for the men folk. So let's talk about coffee. Before we get into it, just a note from our sponsor. Oh, I love them. We have got the gals over at I Love Ghee. Yes. Who could be a better sponsor for our podcast than the amazing, amazing Ahara Ghee Company? And I'm going to give you guys the link to this. They give us a nice little discount, so make sure to get the discount in the show notes. Ahara Ghee, best ghee in the world. In other podcasts, I talk more about just the incredible way that they make this ghee. But what I want to focus on today, because it's related to our topic, is they have some of the best Ayurveda modern recipes that I've ever seen on the internet. And so I'm making some of their stuff, and they have an incredible recipe called chai coffee cake. And it's perfect because they make a ghee that's called the chai spice ghee, and you use that ghee, and you also use something called rasa coffee, which we're also going to give you guys a link to the show notes, which is a coffee substitute that uses adaptogenic Ayurvedic herbs. And what that means is instead of draining your adrenal glands and your kidneys, it's going to start to rebuild it. So chai coffee cake recipe. There is another recipe on their site for a cashew chai latte. So we're going to give you a link to cashew chai latte and chai coffee cake and their special chai spice ghee, which is phenomenal. I actually put a teaspoon of it into my tea in the morning. So really good stuff. Check out that in the show notes. Also, we have our upcoming Ayurveda School Level 1 starting in January. And we're going to give you a link to a completely free, downloadable 4-hour course with me. So if you're like, I love the Ghee Spot, I want to know more, you hear me going on and on about Ayurveda School, you hear us talking about it all the time on our Instagram. And we just had one of our trainings coming up this weekend. And so if you're like, well, what are you guys doing? We have a 4-hour class that you can take with me completely for free. It's video, and it's really, what is Ayurveda? What is feminine form Ayurveda? What are the basics of what we do over here at Shakti School? So make sure to check that out if you're interested. We also have, for our podcast listeners, always, we're going to give our podcast listeners a special opportunity to join the Lineage of Love, which is my signature move, you guys. It's all of our yoga, movement, dance, feminine form flows online. So if you want the videos and the audios of the meditations, all of this amazing stuff that helps get our body out of fight or flight, get us into the parasympathetic nervous system, we have an amazing platform for that. It's a monthly subscription called the Lineage of Love, and I'd love to invite you to try it for a month totally for free. So that's happening too. Again, links in the show notes. And subscribe to us. It helps people find us. All right, my dears, without further ado, let's have a word on coffee. You want me to stop drinking espresso? You're going to have to pull it from my cold, dead hand. That's something that I think my mother said to me once. So before we talk about coffee, let's talk about rat orgasms. Yes, rat orgasms. So they've done these experiments on rats where they gave them some sort of electrical orgasmic shock every time they leaned up against a little stimulus bar. And what they found was that the rats, what we may expect, right? The rats just continued to go over to the orgasmatron bar and just lean up against it over and over and over all day long. And after a day or so, the poor oversexed rodent would just keel over dead in a pool of its own pleasure. And I remember my friend Michael Rubin, if you're listening, hi Michael, told me about this experiment, and he likened it to our relationship with the internet. And it was such a brilliant statement, because that's what we do. Like, we get on the internet, we get on social media, and we get these dopamine hits. Well, it's the same thing with our coffee and with our stimulants. They make us feel good, right? And a little bit of rat orgasmatron is okay, but we are not that different, genetically speaking, from the rats. And so we do what they do, and that is we just continue to use it in excess. And so what I love, you guys, about Ayurveda, what I think will love, I don't know what's going on with me. It's like I just keep falling in love with Ayurveda and the mysticism of these perennial philosophies that just keep showing up all over the planet and from all over these different cultures. And I'm in a real love affair right now with Ayurveda. I fall in and out of love. Sometimes I'm really strict about Ayurveda and really dive in. And sometimes I kind of go, you know what, I'm sick of this. I'm going to just do whatever I want. And I think that's really, really important. But right now I'm in love with Ayurveda again, and finding this way of just really making it my own and making it real. And one of the things that Ayurveda says is that, look, there is no Ayurvedic food. Like, let that sink into you right now. There's no Ayurvedic way of eating. When you're Ayurvedic, it doesn't mean that you're eating Indian food. If you're in India, you should be, right? But or you could be. Ayurveda, there is no Ayurveda food. And guess what else? There is no food that's Ayurvedic. There is no medicine that's Ayurvedic. There is no herb that's Ayurvedic. Guys, it is a system of understanding nature. Every food can be Ayurvedic in the right moment, at the right time, for the right person, in the right season. Similarly, all of our Western herbs are Ayurvedic if we know their quality, and we know when to use them and why and how and for whom. So the same thing with coffee. Coffee is not bad. Coffee is not anti-Ayurvedic. And I'm so tired. You can hear it in my voice. I'm so tired of everyone thinking that Ayurveda is this way of labeling reality as good or bad, right or wrong. And people always say to me, oh, I drink coffee. I'm so bad. I'm not Ayurvedic. And I'm like, guys, like Dr. Ladd teaches, to give coffee to people who are kapha. It's good for them, right? So this idea that coffee is anti-Ayurvedic is just wrong. So let's talk about coffee. What does Ayurveda have to say about it? And what it has to say is congruent with what Western science is now showing. Coffee can be good for you. It's got amazing properties, polyphenols. They're now showing for the brain are very helpful. And there's all this amazing stuff coming out. And of course, if you follow the Bulletproof guy, he's obsessed with coffee, in my opinion, a little overly obsessed. And if you look at it, he uses it, he's more of a Pitta Kapha person. But there's not, I haven't heard him talk much about body types. So coffee's great if you have a big, strong constitutional system, right, that can handle the shock of it. But if you're a long, lanky Vata type, what I call the unicorn class, coffee may not be for you. So in Ayurveda, coffee is considered something of just like anything strong and non-food like, right? Coffee's a medicine. Coffee as a medicine can be a poison in your system or a help to your system. Coffee is a medicine. It's not a nourishment. I'll repeat that. Coffee is a form of strong nature medicine. It is not a nourishment. There are something like 800 active compounds found in coffee that can be beneficial for health if you have the type of constitution and condition that it may benefit. What we do know is that it has a powerful effect on many of the systems in our body, and it alters our chemistry. And it especially affects our circulatory, our nervous system, our endocrine system, and our digestive system. So a lot of our systems. And, if you understand Ayurvedic medicine, if I say all of that, what I'm saying is that it affects all of our body. Because if you affect the digestive system, that's going to continue on down that river of tissue creation in the body. Because Ayurveda understands that all of our tissues come from food. And so all of our systems are affected by the health of the digestive system. So think about the first time you ever had coffee. The first time you had coffee, you probably did not like the taste very much. And, if you give coffee to a baby, don't do that, please. Do not give coffee to your baby. But if we did do that, they'll reject it, right? And so our body has this ability to recognize strong plant medicine and plant poison, and will typically react really strongly with an aversion to the taste. And that's why adults a lot of times put milk and sugar in it, because milk and sugar are, of course, things babies love, and it makes it more palatable to our palate. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, coffee is bitter, it's astringent, it's hot, it's oily, it's heavy, and it's very drying to all of our tissues. And so it dries up our lymph system, it heats the blood, and it stimulates the digestive and nervous system. It acts like a really powerful diuretic, which means it pulls water from the body, and a super powerful stimulator for what's called your gastrocolic reflex, your elimination system, if you will. And so what it does is it overstimulates that, and over time it weakens the natural tonicity of your body's ability to just eliminate on its own. So a lot of people use coffee as which is another of its properties, a laxative. And so in a way, we get into a little bit of a negative feedback system where I need the coffee to go to the bathroom in the morning because I'm constipated. If I don't have it, I'm not going to go. And because I drink the coffee, that dries out my colon even more. And you get into kind of this fish eating its own tail kind of situation. And I get that. I've been there. I have done a couple of times in my life. I've given up caffeine and I've switched over now completely to green tea, which is still diuretic and a laxative. So we'll talk in a moment about, well, what can I do? Like if I am ready to give up coffee, or I think that I might not be one of these people that coffee is really great for, how can I do to transition? I'll give you some advice on that. But tea's different. So even if you're drinking black tea, green tea, coffee is a bitter, hot, heavy, oily bean. And beans have different effect on our body than what a tea is, which a tea is an astringent, bitter, light leaf. And so I learned from Dr. Claudia Welch, one of my mentors, and I read this also in her book, Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life, which we'll put a link to, which is Healthy, Happy, Sexy is an amazing book. They're different books. You need both of these on your Ayurveda lady stand. But Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life is one of the best Ayurveda books, in my opinion, modern Ayurveda books ever written. And what she says is that the coffee bean has this particular affinity with our lady parts. The tissues of our womb and our breasts have a particular affinity to store the chemical compounds of coffee. So you'll notice that, like, if I drink a lot of coffee, my breasts will get my mind is blanking. Where is it? You get these little cysts in your breast that are no big deal, and they go away, right? But coffee has affinity for our reproductive organs. Coffee is also typically sprayed with chemical pesticides, which by nature are estrogenic, xenoestrogenic to be exact, and that means that they mimic the female sex hormones. So when we drink coffee, these chemicals concentrate in our breast tissue and our reproductive tissue. So you really want to avoid that. If you do drink coffee, we're going to talk about ways in which you can make sure that you avoid that issue of the chemicals. So many of us self-medicate with coffee, and I know for myself, like, my stress levels tend to be on the higher end. I just tend to run kind of high. Nervous system speaking, I tend to run more on that hypervigilant side. That's just the way I've been since I was born, right? Some of you understand, like, it's just the system's tendency. And it doesn't mean that we can't change the system, and it doesn't mean we can't become more resilient and parasympathetic, which is truly the search and the real calling for my whole life because of that nature. And it can shift and it can change. But coffee, for people who are already a little bit hypervigilant, stressed out, some of you who may not be hypervigilant, you just have adrenal fatigue or you're exhausted, that coffee is going to aggravate the adrenal glands. It increases the production of cortisol and it pulls prana from the kidneys. So then, we do that, we deplete even more. And then guess what? It's the same thing as with the digestion. Now I need more coffee to wake up and get going in the morning. And so, mamas, I understand that very well. I get it, right? And so how can we break this vicious cycle? One of the ways I do it pretty much every year, I'll go and do a panchakarma, or I'll stay at home and do it. And that is a cleanse where when we go through how to do an Ayurvedic cleanse in Ayurveda school, it's way beyond the scope of our podcast, but doing any kind of cleanse where you let go of caffeine for a while is really helpful. And it takes about 3 to 6 months to restore adrenal glands from chronic caffeine stimulation. And so when I do that, what I do is, and so if you're a coffee drinker, what I recommend to my people is that you go from coffee to a really strong black tea, a chai tea, something like that. And that's going to help, right? Because you're not going from coffee to nothing. Go from coffee to black tea, and then do that for a week. And then go from black tea to a really strong loose leaf green tea. And that's going to cut down that caffeine even more. And then go from green tea to half caffeinated green, which it actually has taurine, half decaf. And then go to decaf green. And then you can kind of go to whatever, right? Herbally speaking, or you can stick with decaffeinated green tea. And what I do now is I'll do half full caffeine, half caffeine green tea. And that's what I take in the mornings, most mornings. And then, some mornings I'll do like full on green tea. It just depends on the day. But another really awesome thing is to replace. So our body wants to have the sensation of stimulation. So some of my favorite things that stimulate without aggravating the nervous system are herbs like tulsi, ginger. Cacao has caffeine, but it's going to be a little bit less stimulating than coffee. Brahmi tea is wonderful for the mind. It is opening, stimulating for the mind in a way that actually soothes the central nervous system. So I'm a big fan of Brahmi. And there's a new thing out that I've just found called Rasa coffee, which we will give you a link to. And that's full of Ayurvedic herbs and natural things like dandelion and chicory root have kind of a coffee flavor without the caffeine. And as I said, green tea, I'm going to put a link to my favorite chai that is so awesome because you just wake up, you boil your water, and then you can throw a teaspoon of this stuff in the water and you don't have to brew it. It's just already made and it's full of really good spices. So I'll give you guys a link to my favorite chai. And that stuff is powerful. And then the last thing I want to say about coffee before we close is that, look, you can have it. Here's when I think it makes sense to have it. It makes sense to have it if you're just a kapha person and it just doesn't affect you the same way. Pittas, kaphas, rock on. Use it. We hate you, right? We're jealous of you for so many reasons. If it is a cold or cool and kind of damp day in the fall or the winter, have a little coffee. No big deal, right? It's only when it becomes this daily thing that you have 2 or 3 of every morning to get going that it's an issue. The other way that you can make it more Ayurvedically sound and soothing is to reduce some of the acidity of it and the bitter kind of astringent drying nature of it. And the way you can do that is to look at what traditional cultures do. And so in a lot of cultures, especially the Middle East, in India as well, we add spices to the coffee. So adding something like cardamom will actually help cut that acidity. Add some cardamom to your coffee, cinnamon's good, ginger's good. And then if you are drinking it, cut out the acidity by adding some full fat milk or cream and even a little bit of honey or whatever your maple syrup, whatever your sweetener is that you're using. And that's actually going to be easier on your gut than straight up black coffee. All right, my loves, I hope this was helpful for you. It made me really this talk has made me really crave a cup of coffee. It is one of our greatest pleasures, and I think that we should all be able to use pleasure as we need it and use your pleasure in a way that brings more pleasure and less pain to your life. Thank you guys for listening to the Ghee Spot, and check out our amazing sponsor, Ahara Ghee, and all of the great links in the show notes for some of the awesome recipes that we're going to provide for you this week on the Ghee Spot. All right. Thank you guys.
beautiful.